Doctors of Reddit, what do we not know about the human body?
Had a pathologist tell me that the interesting part of his job wasn't finding out how someone died, it was seeing everything that can be wrong with someone. So many life-threatening or life-altering horrible things that a person can have going on and still be alive. Good friend died of pneumonia. He was too busy at work, couldn't afford to take time off. He kept using OTC meds for the symptoms. He died unattended, so the coroner had to get involved. They did an autopsy. His body had cancer in 3 different places. He never stopped. Dude was old-time tough.
There was a study in a Scandinavian country that did breast biopsies on women of a wide range of ages who died of non-cancer-related reasons, accidents, murder, peacefully in their sleep, and it was something like 15% of the women had cancerous clusters or something. If they had found it during their life, they would have been treated for breast cancer, ranging from stage 1 to stage 3, and it was really spread across the age range too. Also, most men get prostate cancer at the end of their lives, but they can just live with it. It's one of these contained cancers that seem to not metastasize. I'm an anesthesiologist. We still don't really know why inhaled volatile anesthetics, like sevoflurane, the principal anesthetic agent used to maintain general anesthesia, work. We kind of have an idea of maybe how it happens, but really we don't know. It's commonly said in my field that whoever figures this out will win the next Nobel Prize in medicine.
One of my favorite facts about anesthesia is that modern anesthesia was first made safe and reliable by John Snow, the same John Snow of the 1854 Broad Street cholera outbreak fame, who gave a much-needed boost to germ theory. Anesthesia was apparently developed by dentists in the U.S., starting with ether, but without accounting for Boyle's laws. Snow developed an apparatus that would standardize delivery to give patients a predictable dose. He also figured out doses by testing this on himself, which is generally attributed to him getting a stroke and his demise at a relatively early age. John Snow is truly one of my favorite science people who did so much and are known for so little. John Snow was also the dude to be the first to give anesthesia to a royal by anesthetizing Victoria for her childbirths.
I'm a derm. We don't know what exactly causes itching, like the molecular pathways for it. That's why it can be so hard to find a good treatment when a patient comes in for itchy skin.
I'm a sleep specialist. While we do have some good theories about some of the functions of REM as far as how it affects the brain and health, we still don't fully understand the purpose of dreaming. Like, why do we dream at all? And why do dreams have a narrative instead of random, incomprehensible imagery? Unfortunately, this is unlikely to even be solved.
I think it's nice our brains will put on little movies for us while in shutdown mode. It makes me wonder if it's possible to encourage us to keep sleeping, like when you're in that half-awake, half-asleep state and dreaming.
I had a lecturer at medical school say, half of medicine is made up. We just don't know which half.
As a variation on this, half of what science knows now will be disproven in 50 years. We just don't know which half.
OBGYN here. We still don't know exactly what makes labor start. We know all about the mechanics and physiology, but we don't know what makes the average uterus say it's go time.
Adding on to the OBGYN topic, the placenta is so understudied.
Not MD, but PhD. Right now, we are working on the connection between our intestinal microbiome and neuropsychiatric disease and brain aging. For instance, people with inflammatory bowel disease are more likely to develop dementia and experience comorbid anxiety and depression, but we don't know why.
100 years from now, people gonna be like, and in ancient times, they didn't know your digestion affected your brain. According to my doctor, what causes IBS? Oh, also, what exactly causes sexually induced sneezing?
I am on SSRI meds and rarely sneeze or orgasm. Like a full-body response is dampened somehow.
The gut microbiome. While it's well known that the gut plays a huge role in digestion, researchers are discovering just how much our gut bacteria affect other parts of our health, like mood, immunity, and even brain function.
This even extends to diet generally, because it is almost impossible to study effectively and ethically. For example, an experiment looking at the long-term impact of eating a specific food is unreliable at best. People are naturally not good at sticking to a specific diet. Even if someone does stick to the diet, it is hard to prove they did. People are not honest about what they have eaten. People eat lots of different things, making it almost impossible to prove causation rather than correlation. Funding also generally comes from the food industry, introducing potential bias. So, how can an experiment be designed? As an example of how little we truly understand, the single largest and most detailed experiment into the harmful impact of saturated fat will never be repeated for ethical reasons. They fed a mental institution specific and controlled diets. The results demonstrated people who ate more saturated fat had higher cholesterol, and better health outcomes. When the experiment didn't demonstrate what they had expected, it wasn't fully published until the research was uncovered and republished decades later. When even one of our most basic assumptions, saturated fat is bad for health, may not even hold true, how much do we truly understand?
This is one of the best Ask Reddit threads I've ever seen. Thank you all for this.
We don't know the precise mechanism by which B12 deficiency causes nerve damage. We know that it happens, but not why. Many medical things are like that, easily observed and proven cause and effect, but complex and unclear mechanisms. Much of biology is still a black box to us. Neurological stuff in particular is full of this. Lots of we definitely know damage here causes effect XYZ, but not Y.
Not sure what you mean by that. B12 is a coenzyme necessary for myelination. B12 deficiency causes predictable damage in long tracts first, which are more myelinated. I have a very niche answer. We don't know what is supposed to naturally bind to the area that benzodiazepines work at. Benzodiazepines, BZD, are medications like Xanax and Valium. They produce anti-anxiety effects, and they have a very distinct chemical shape to fit into the BZD site in a group of 5 proteins. But we don't know what is supposed to go there. Many medications are analogs of naturally binding molecules that we copy and then use to create an effect. The BZD site is for something, we just don't know what. All you wonderful people, I am headed to bed. I will answer anything else in the morning, and feel free to reach out if you ever have a question. Witnessing so many genuinely inquisitive and intelligent people has made my day. Please never stop learning. Thank you all.
So, essentially, we're trying to find the endobenzo.
Not a doctor, but this was posted a few years ago when the same question was asked. We still aren't sure what causes precordial catch syndrome. Reddit is where I finally put a name to the sporadic chest pain I had in my teens and 20s. That goes away when you take a deep breath.
Not to diminish your pain and experience, but I love how the wiki states treatment consists of reassurance. Got a chuckle from me.
One of the few absolutes in medical science is that nobody born blind has ever developed schizophrenia.
This fact is so goddamn interesting because, to me I will say, not at all educated in neuroscience or psychology, that has to mean that schizophrenia is intrinsically linked with vision specifically. Because even though people with schizophrenia have visual and auditory hallucinations, born deaf people have been known to develop it. So, what makes being able to see such an important factor in getting it? I need the smart people to figure it out. Stat. There's still a lot about the immune system that's undiscovered.
We haven't figured out autoimmune diseases. We know that, for whatever reason, some things flip a switch in people, but we haven't fully figured it out yet.
There are organelles called vaults, in human cells and in most other eukaryotic species. They are made of 78 copies of a protein called the major vault protein, totaling about 3 times the size of a ribosome and larger than most viruses. Their function is not totally understood, but it's probably something to do with the nucleus, though analogs of the genes for vaults even appear in bacteria. As they are found in such a wide variety of species, life on Earth must have started making vaults early in its history. The similarity of the genes encoding vault proteins across diverse species would presumably indicate the importance of vaults for viable life. But experiments haven't shown a great deal of harm done to lab animals that had their vault genes knocked out. Even stranger, several of the species used in laboratories as model organisms naturally lack vaults. The use of these organisms long predates the discovery of vaults in 1986, with some going back over a century.
Apparently, we know next to nothing about fibroids, which, like 75% of women, have at some point in their lives. That's great, considering that the largest one removed was 100 lbs, so not exactly a minor issue. There are theories about different hormones and what things put you at higher risk, but aside from having surgery to have your existing ones removed, there is basically no information on what you can do to prevent them from coming back.
This and endometriosis. It's wild and crazy making.
Doctor here. Off the top of my head, here's a few deceptively big ones. 1. We still aren't exactly sure how anesthesia works. We just know it causes certain effects, and they are useful, so we use it. 2. Psychiatry is still shockingly infantile in our understanding of human disorders. It's constantly in a state of flux. We don't understand a lot about the meds we currently use, and the diagnostic criteria for disorders still changes as we realize. Hey, maybe all these behaviors aren't the same source disorder. It's incredibly hard to diagnose when the criteria is largely based on self-report and subjective observations. 3. To a lesser degree than #2, neurology is still learning a lot. It's further because you can observe more objective findings in neuro than psych, but we still struggle a lot with how brains function. 4. Immunology. Don't even ask me because no one knows really. 5. Yawns. Still guessing on why that happens too. There's some theories, but that's the best we've got. Ask any medical professional about immunology. So little known, so complex.
Medical professional here and can confirm.
The role of our DNA. We've sequenced the human genome, but a large part of it remains unexplained.
I've heard sequencing the genome described as having an exhaustive parts list for a Boeing 747, down to the last screw. But no instructions on what each piece does or how they fit together.
Why doesn't our brain use its stem cells to heal itself?
I'm a nurse, not a doctor. But in school, I learned that when in vitro fertilization was being pioneered, scientists were unable to create an embryo from the combination of sperm and egg. It wasn't until they added female secretions in that they were able to produce viable embryos, and they don't know what role those secretions play in the process. This was about 15 years ago, so if anyone has new information on the topic, I'd love to hear it.
Ooh, I can answer this one. The reason why adding female secretions was required to produce viable embryos was because of the role they play in facilitating a process called capacitation. Basically, sperm aren't ready to fertilize an egg at the time of ejaculation. They can't move very well, and they can't penetrate this protective outer coating surrounding the egg called the zona pellucida. Exposure to the vaginal environment is what triggers the processes to occur that enable the sperm to swim and get through that outer coating so they can fertilize the egg. It was that assisted reproductive research you mentioned that led scientists to discover and try to understand all this stuff.
Not a doctor, but why is tinnitus so hard to cure? Idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, a disease that causes diffuse scarring, fibrosis of the lung. Anytime you hear idiopathic in medicine, it essentially means we don't know what causes it. There are multiple fibrotic lung diseases that they have identified the causes of over the years. In general, any idiopathic illness is likely something we will know much more about one day. This just comes first to mind. For many medicines, it's not clear how they work, or even if they work. For example, look at the actual efficacy trials of name-brand antidepressants. When you look at them in aggregate, they look like they barely work. Yet basically, everybody knows somebody whose life was saved by a specific antidepressant.
I wonder if some of the reason for that is that not all people diagnosed as having major depressive disorder have that as the main issue. I was diagnosed with MDD years ago, and nothing ever worked. Not meds, not cognitive behavioral therapy, nothing. Was diagnosed as an adult in my 40s with ADHD, was medicated, and haven't had a major depressive episode since. MDD wasn't the cause, it was the symptom.
Rabies pathology, Alzheimer's etiology, encephalitis lethargica, chronic fatigue syndrome.
As someone with chronic fatigue, it can be so frustrating that there isn't much known about it. I've had some doctors who believed me, and others who basically wrote me off when I told them about it.
Not a doctor, but I study cell and molecular biology. The immune system is wildly complex, and right now, it feels as though we're staring down into Mariana's Trench.
Why is it that it's so hard for us to figure it out? It's so frustrating that we know very little about conditions like arthritis, lupus, etc.
Allergies, specifically food allergies. And why do adults develop them after never reacting to them before?
It's really frustrating to deal with a new allergy, since it can take a while to figure it out. It was safe to eat before, so you don't even consider it. I always liked pistachios as a kid, since they were a holiday nut to me. My mom would decorate the table runner with nuts and fruits every Christmas. I'd even suck on the salty shells and spit them out in a pile. Then, one year as an adult visiting for Christmas dinner, my throat started to close a short while after eating one. Scared me really bad, but Benadryl helped after a few minutes. The only new thing I'd eaten that dinner was this hibiscus tea lemonade thing my sister had brought. She was experimenting with healthy recipes, so I thought for sure it must be that. I dumped my drink out and just had water. A couple minutes later, I had another pistachio and had to go through the whole thing again, haha. As a side note, the next year's Easter, I found out my stepmom's green Jell-O salad was a pistachio Jell-O after I had a reaction to eating it. That also took a while to figure out because why would there be nuts in a Jell-O salad? I thought it was one of the fruits instead.
Thanks for watching. And what's one surprising fact about the human body that blows your mind? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe.